Hello! I watched 96 2024 films and I want to rank them. Before I start, these are the films that I haven't yet seen but I want to see. So if you've seen my Letterboxd, you know that I already have a list where I have ranked all of the 2024 films that I've watched from worst to best. But I feel like there might be a lot of recency bias, so I want to completely start from scratch again. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to rank everything by the date that I added it, from most recent to last recent. Starting with Flow. I thought this was a really great animated film. There's something very eerie about it. It's set in this environment where this freak natural event is going on where the world just starts flooding, and there's something really eerie about it, and there's no humans in the plot at all. It's just animals, and that aspect of the story is kind of a little bit unsettling, which I kind of like, but also kind of has this cutesiness feeling to it with all these animals on this boat. A lot of these animals feel way too intelligent as well. It's really fun. The animation is great as well. I'm pretty sure it was a really small team that made this film as well, all in Blender. It looks beautiful. It really does. Wicked. I'm going to put this below Flow. I don't think it's as good. I'm not going to lie, for the first half, I was not liking it. I'm not going to lie. I just found it a bit too over the top. I'm not the biggest fan of musicals, and the musical numbers were a bit overbearing. But I felt like in the second half, the story really took main focus, and they really developed these characters really well. The two lead performances in it were really great as well, from Cynthia... I forgot her second name, and Ariana Grande. Really good two lead performances, and their dynamics between each other are really great. And yeah, like I said, that second half, really good. That last scene actually gave me goosebumps, so that must say something. A Real Pain. This is Jesse Eisenberg's directorial debut, if I'm not mistaken. I can't actually remember. I'm going to put this at the top so far. I think it's a really quiet film that really lets you take everything in and really makes you understand these two main characters and their relationship with one another and what they've been through, all whilst they go on this Holocaust tour, which seems really dark, but there's really a light at the end of the tunnel when it comes to this film. Joker Folie à Deux. Oh no. I'm going to put this at the bottom for now. As you can see, I did rate it 3 stars though, so I don't think it was horrible. I think it's a little bit overhated. I do think the third act was extremely messy. I did think the rest of the film was pretty good. I didn't mind the court drama stuff. The musical numbers kind of fit with the style of the film and what's going on in Arthur's mind, even though they don't add anything to the plot at all, and a lot of the musical numbers really feel pointless, but I enjoyed them nonetheless. I think they were well lit. They just look really nice, and I think the stuff inside Arkham Asylum is really interesting. It really presents Arkham Asylum in a really bleak way that I appreciate. It's definitely not as good as the first film. I think the first film had this like lingering feeling of dread as Arthur was just going down this worse and worse path until obviously he shot someone on live TV. Whereas this film, it just doesn't have that same feeling, that same like progression. Gladiator 2. This one surprised me with how much I liked it actually. I put it between Wicked and Joker. I think it contains the events of the first film in a really great way with the son of Maximus. You get some really good character development from him in this film, and I get a lot of people say it's like a rehash of the first film. I do think a lot of elements is a bit of a rehash of the first film, but the battle scenes are really upped from the first film. You got like monkeys and that. Maybe it does get a bit too cartoonish, but I don't really care. And also Denzel Washington was such a good character. Like I love Denzel Washington's character so much in it. His performance was so good. Wallace and Gromit: Vengeance Most Foul. This was such a charming time. I put this at the top. I really loved The Wrong Trousers. The Wrong Trousers is just like a 10 out of 10 short film. So the reintroduction of Feathers McGraw is great. I loved him returning, and the way he's integrated into the plot is really great. Wallace and Gromit are just legendary characters, so it's great seeing them back again, because last time we saw them was like 2008, wasn't it? But this is like a full feature-length film. Yeah, the stop motion's great. The story's just really fun. There's some really funny moments. I loved it pretty much. Sonic the Hedgehog 3. This was another really fun time. This is where it's going to get a bit, like, I'm going to get torn because I'm not sure where to rank it. I'm going to rank it over Wicked because I enjoyed it more than Wicked, I'm not going to lie, and it's shorter than Wicked. This film is so fun. Shadow is so good. I love Keanu Reeves as Shadow. Obviously, the massive standout is the two Jim Carreys. He manages to have so much chemistry with himself. It's actually unbelievable, and it's just so fun. And like I said in my end of month videos, like, that third act kind of got me a little bit emotional with what they did with Dr. Robotnik at the end. Carry on. I'm gonna rank this above Sonic, I think. I enjoyed this so much. I thought this was gonna be like a really boring action film, but it was the most fun I've probably had ever with a film last year. If you haven't watched it, you need to give it a watch. It's so fun. I was on the edge of my seat a lot of the time. I was literally getting giddy and jumping up and down when a scene would happen, and I'd start clapping because, like, literally, there's so many hype moments in this film. Like, I don't know how to explain it, but there's something about this film that just had me so engaged. Anora! This one is going at the top of the list for me. I think I'm going to change the layout of this list in a minute. Hang on. That's better. Anora, just a really great film. It went in a direction I wasn't expecting at all. It starts off like a romance where this stripper falls in love with this proper rich guy. Then it turns out he was a horrible person, I guess. And it's basically the rest of the movie is basically the repercussions of that. And it's Anora's character coming to terms with this man being not a good person. And like Mikey Madison, just her performance in here is so good. I feel like she has this personality as this stripper that she wants to keep up during the film, but as the film goes on, her like real personality starts shining more and more. And there's some really vulnerable moments from her that I really love. It's really well shot as well, really well directed, so many good scenes. It's going in the top. Venom: The Last Dance. This is is it better than Joker? I don't know. I kind of appreciated Joker more than Venom, but I still had so much fun with Venom. I do think the side plot with the scientists and all these different symbiotes was kind of boring. I didn't care much for it at all, but I can't get enough of the stuff with Eddie Brock and Venom. I love Tom Hardy in these films. He's so good. Recently I've seen people share that final scene of the film where it's playing Memories by Maroon 5 and Tom Hardy's just walking through the streets and it zooms in his face and he says, "I won't forget you, buddy." And then that's where the film ends. It's so funny. I feel like it's supposed to be cheesy. It's supposed to be so like campy, and I love it so much. But again, the side plot I wasn't as interested in. So Heretic, yeah, I'll put it here. Like I said in my end of the month video, I wasn't the biggest fan of how this film ended. I just felt like it went in a very odd direction that I wasn't the biggest fan of. But that first half was so good, so well written. Hugh Grant's character is so good in here. I'm just on edge all the time. And how he challenges these Mormons and how the Mormons challenge him back, it's just so interesting to see. And I like how this house feels like its own character, and it's probably the most frightening thing about the film is the house, because the house keeps going and going and going. There's more and more bits to this house, and I kind of like that aspect of the film. Again, the ending was a bit weird. I just wasn't the biggest fan of it, but overall really good film. Juror number 2. I'll put it above Flow. I think it's really well written, really good script. I've said this before, but I think it's a bit basic in the direction. There's not much going on with the cinematography. It's pretty basic, but the story is so engaging. And Nicholas Holt's character is just so interesting of a character to like make the main character, you know? And you don't have to root for him or not. And I like how it has me torn in my mind whether to root for this character or root for that character. And it's really interesting as a film. Memoir of a Snail. I love this film so much. More people need to see this. Like, how many people have seen this now? Okay, 60k people have seen it. That's alright, but I feel like even more people need to see it because it's just such a good film. It had me very emotional near the end, to be honest. I was nearly crying. It's such a well-told story. It's very bittersweet, it's very depressing, but it's also like really uplifting. There's some really funny moments, and there's also some really like completely heartbreaking moments. And it really goes through the story of this woman, basically a life story up to this point, and it's told so well. The stop motion is so great as well. Stop motion is probably my favourite style of animation, which is why I got Wallace and Gromit so high as well. But yeah, stop motion is a type of animation where you have to put so much work into it, and you can really see the work that's been put into it in this film. Yeah, it's so good. It's so good. Conclave. This is one that is eyed to win Best Picture at the Oscars. I personally don't think it's as good as people are saying it is. I still think it's a really solid film, really good script, like really well told, but I just wasn't into it as much as I wanted to be, and I just didn't find it as memorable as some of the other films on this list. I think Ralph Fiennes puts in a great performance as the main character, and there's some really good like twists and turns and like ooh and ah moments. What? I just wasn't as into it as I wanted to be. Again, I don't know. I'm really torn again. I'll put it here. So I ended up putting We Live in Time and Emilia Perez on this list, which I recently realised is technically not a 2024 film, according to my rules in which I include the films on the lists, which is if a film was released like in the US or something, or a big country in 2024, but it didn't release in its home country till like 2025, then I'll count it as a 2025 film. So as you'll see in like the next part of the video, I end up taking off the list, but it's here for like the next few minutes if you're wondering why it's there. Small 2. This is a really good sequel. I'll put it here. The style to this film is really good. I think the style of the first film was really good as well, but this one is really upped. There's a lot of really interesting visuals in here, obviously because the main character of this film is a singer, so there's a lot of great visuals associated with her concert and everything going around it. And I like this like lingering feeling of dread this film has. I felt like the first film had it too, but it's like even more so in this film, because this woman has all these people depending on her, because she's this massive pop star and everyone loves her and that. So when this small demon like attacks her and like gets into her mind and that, it makes for a really tense experience, and I really liked it. My Old Ass. This is a fun little, I guess, coming-of-age comedy, but it's also like, it's not sci-fi, but it's like fantasy, because she takes shrooms and then her older self can come into the past, and yeah, it's really weird, but it's a really interesting concept, I guess. It has probably the best performance from Aubrey Plaza that I've seen. Yeah, I don't have much else to say, it's just a really strong coming-of-age story. I'll put it here. Saturday Night. This one is a biopic, and it's a really tense biopic. It doesn't take its foot off the gas. Everything's constantly moving, and it makes for a really like stressful film. It also really, I guess, recaptures that energy of that night and everything that happened during that night, and how much they wanted to get this show to air. And it's just a really like tense film. It's really funny. I get what a lot of people are saying, where like a lot of the actors who play the characters in this film are like kind of caricatures of the actual people, rather than playing the actual people. But yeah, I thought it's well done. Yeah. Megalopolis, oh my goodness me. This film was an absolute mess. Just a complete and utter mess, front to back. But I appreciated it. I appreciated it. It's really interesting. Francis Ford Coppola has been trying to make this film for over 20 years now, I think. And yeah, he finally got his chance to make it. And it is such an odd story. How long is it? I forgot how long it was. It's over 2 hours. It's 2 hours 20 minutes. That's really long. It's really weird. There's some parts of the story that I actually kind of connected to, and I actually understood like, oh yeah, that's what he's trying to get out at there. So there's something about it that I kind of liked. So you know what, I'll rank it there. Again, I think the subplot in Venom was not great, but with this whole film it just had something about it. So Sing Sing, this film is just beautiful. I rank this... again, I'm so torn on these films and I'm getting really torn on them. I'll put it number 2. I just think Colman Domingo's performance in here was so good. And a lot of the side characters are actually playing themselves, which is like a really amazing thing, that like they actually got these people that this film is based on to play themselves. And it's just such a uplifting story. It's really emotionally heavy, but there's so many like uplifting parts, there's so many like absolutely devastating parts. And you really manage to connect with all these characters. And this prison ends up feeling like really welcoming and warm, which is something you don't expect from a prison. But A Different Man, another really good film. Like, I'm going to put it near the top again. Sebastian Stan puts in such a good performance, and it's such a really interesting concept for a film, with this guy who has this facial disability, and he goes through this new operation to make his face look normal, and then he just decides to abandon his old life altogether and just become this brand new person. Yeah, the story kind of goes on from there and chaos ensues, and it's really fun. It's really hard to watch at points as you watch Sebastian Stan just realise that he might have made a mistake. I love it because of that. Paddington in Peru. This film was actually released half a year before the US get to see this film, which is pretty mad because we never get films early here in the UK. Like in the UK, some films usually end up releasing like a bunch of months after the US get to see it, and it's just so infuriating. But finally we get to see a film earlier than the US, and I feel like we do deserve to see it before the US because it's Paddington. Like, Paddington is a national treasure, you know? And yeah, I like this film overall. I put it above Conclave. I thought it was a really charming watch again. It obviously is missing Paul King, who I felt like brought all his charm to the first two films, and I felt like this film is kind of trying to recapture it and not quite getting it as good as those first two films. It still is a very fun time. I think the setting of Peru is pretty fun and interesting. There's a lot of stuff you can do with the setting of Peru and this like completely new setting for the Browns. I do think some parts of the story are kind of a rehash of the last two films, and I wasn't the biggest fan of Antonio Banderas' character. I just think it's just a really predictable character, but there's some really fun aspects to it, and I mean, it's a Paddington film, like, yeah. Look Back, this is an amazing film, just so emotionally heavy, and again, I'm really stuck on where to put this. The thing is, I don't know if I should class it as a real film, because it's under an hour. Like, I don't know if most people would class that as an actual film, but I guess I am on this list. I think I put it number 2. It's a story that I really connect to because I used to love drawing back in the day. I still love drawing. I'm doing graphics A level, so I love art in that. Yeah, it's just a story about this artist who gets in a friendship with this other artist. They end up doing big things together, but then something happens and then it gets really dark really fast. But yeah, I think the animation is amazing and it's so emotional. I do feel like it's trying to like pull tears out of the audience. The score is really manipulative, but that's really my only complaint. It's such a beautiful film. Wolves. Oh, I might put this one in last place, but this is the most boring, generic, forgettable film. I've just realised how boring, generic and forgettable it really is. I like Brad Pitt, I like George Clooney, but like, they're not saving this film. It's such a generic script. I can't even remember. There's a chase scene that happened where they chase after this half-naked guy. That's all I remember from this film, really. There's some fun banter between the two, but it's such a nothing film. The Apprentice, another Sebastian Stan film. I don't think this one is as good as A Different Man, but it's still really solid. It's a really good biopic. I might put it in the same ballpark as Saturday Night. Yeah, it's just a really well told biopic about Donald Trump, about his rise, and it's kind of told like a villain origin story. And there's something kind of funny about that. Like, it does have a sense of humour about it, but it also tells these events pretty seriously. Yeah, it's a well told biopic. Oddity. This is a really good horror film. It's just really solid. I don't have much else to say. I'll put it up here, actually. I think the supernatural element is so fun with all these ghosts killing people and that, and it's not that long as well. It's like 90 minutes. It's just a super well done horror film, you know. I don't have much else to say. Piece by Piece, literally no one's seen this film. I don't know why, because it's a really good documentary. I guess that's why not many people have seen it, because it's a documentary and not like an actual film, but it's a documentary that's told in Lego, so it's really weird, but it works really well. I really love Pharrell's music. He's produced so many bangers. He's such a legend, so it is really interesting to see his life story and where he came from, and it's told through Lego, which is really crazy, but it works really well. The soundtrack kind of bumps this film up a little bit by default. Like, there's so many good tracks in this movie. Terrifier 3. This is my favourite out of all the Terrifier films. It's just insane. It's absolutely insane. I think this is the one that has the most like coherent story out of the three. I think the Christmas setting is really funny. There's so many things you can do with Art the Clown at Christmas, you know. I feel like the supernatural element is upped in this film as well. A lot more supernatural stuff, which is really interesting. I felt like the ending was really interesting and it left off an interesting place, and I'm excited to see where they take it for the fourth film, so I'll put it there for now. Woman of the Hour. This is one that I felt like should have been shorter. I felt like it should have just focused on this woman and her experience on the game show and this run-in she had with this murderer, but it started focusing on more the killer than Anna Kendrick's character, the killer's motives and like why the killer wanted to do it. It went into like his previous victims and how he managed to get on the game show and that, and I just wasn't as interested in that as I was with this character on the game show, how she managed to like escape this serial killer. But again, if it just focused on her, then the film would literally be like half an hour long. So I get what they had to pad it out a bit, but I just didn't connect with it as much as I wanted to. But yeah, I liked it. The Wild Robot. This is a film similar to Flow. The animation feels very similar to Flow. It's in a similar environment as well. Yeah, this wild environment. It's a much more uplifting film than Flow. Flow feels a little bit more like drab. This film really focuses on this robot and her relationship with the wild and how she forms this relationship with the dog, and it's really emotionally heavy and it's really well done. Don't have much else to say. This seems like a suitable place. The substance, okay. This is going right to the top. Right to the top. This is my second favourite film of the year. It's so good. I'm not the biggest fan of body horror. I get really squirmish when it comes to like nail stuff and teeth stuff with body horror. They do deal with that in this film, but I didn't mind it as much. It's a very interesting body horror. It's kind of told like a cautionary fairy tale, you know, where you've got this actress who is being like shunned out by the TV industry because she's too old and she just wants to be young again, and then she finally gets the opportunity and then she realises that it might not have been worth it. Yeah, really good concept for a film. Probably the strongest concept of the year. I love the style. I watched the behind the scenes documentary on it and how they managed to pull off a lot of these shots, like all practically as well. It's just really good. It has some like satire to it. It's really funny at points. It's proper horrific at points, but it balances that super well. It's just such a strong story. It feels like just an iconic movie at this point. I wouldn't be surprised if it gets nominated for an Oscar or two. It has been eyed for some Oscar nominations, which is very rare for a horror film, but I really think it can pull it out the bag, you know. As you can see, I'm recording this on a different day. I've got my glasses off because I have a banging headache. It's What's Inside. This is a really crazy horror film with just a really good concept. I say that a lot for a lot of films here, but 2024 has been a good year for horror, and this film is just one of the really good films. The editing is what stood out to me the most in this film. It's just so creative and amazing. It just keeps you on your toes constantly. I do think it's really confusing, but it gets to a point where you don't really care about the characters at all and you just want to see chaos ensue with the story. So it's going up, it's going up. I'll put it here. Alien Romulus. This is probably the best Alien film since Aliens, probably. I think it mixes the horror elements of the first film and the action elements of the second film and just merges it into like a really fun action horror. I love how it builds this world out in this film as well. The world building's really great. There's so many new things introduced in this film that I just loved. There is some bits that look a bit janky visually. There's a cameo in here from a character from the first film that just looked pretty weird in some shots, but apart from that, it's great. I put it there. Transformers 1. This was amazing. It's the best Transformers film by far. The animation is amazing. The story is so interesting, like the origin of Optimus Prime and Megatron. It's so interesting. The hairs stood on the back of my neck. It was such a good third act, and it's surprisingly like mature in some points. So Beetlejuice. I've had a lot of people saying that this is just not as good as the first one, which is really mid, but I personally found it to be really enjoyable, possibly on the same level as the first film. I just felt like it continued the events of the first film really well. I just works really well as a legacy sequel, you know, it just has all the elements that you want from a legacy sequel. Maybe it plays it a bit safe, I don't know, but I love the practical effects in it. Michael Keaton is great as Beetlejuice. I think the new characters introduced are really good. So, I'll put it here. Speak No Evil. I really love this film. I thought James McAvoy was a huge standout in it. It takes the original film and it takes it in a very different direction as well. I was expecting it to be like a shot-for-shot remake, but it's way more different, which I really appreciate. And it kind of complements the original in a way, which I like. I do think the ending was a little bit over the top, and it is like very unintentionally funny a lot of the time, I think. But I enjoyed it so much because of that. It's just really fun. I'll put it there. I'll put it there. Strange Darling. This is probably the best looking film of last year. I love the colour grading, and the way the story's told is really interesting. It's like non-chronological, and it treats the viewer like a kind of detective, like putting all these pieces of the puzzle together to solve who did the things that happened in this film. And it is a really creative film. I'll stick it there. Boy Kills World. I'll put it above Wolves. It's really forgettable. I don't really remember a thing that happened in it, to be honest. I think I enjoyed it well enough when I watched it, but like it just has nothing going for it. Like thinking back to it, what I can remember is it was produced by Sam Raimi, who's one of my favourite directors, and you can kind of feel some Sam Raimi isms in here, but it's just not turned up enough to where like it feels like a Sam Raimi film, you know. It's just pretty nothing film. Blink Twice. This is Zoe Kravitz's directorial debut, I think, and I really enjoyed it. It's another one that I really enjoyed. It's very, like, it's extremely dark and in your face about the subject matter, and everything plays out in a really interesting way. It does it in a, like, kind of twisted comedic way, which is also, like, really interesting. And again, I really enjoy it because of that. I thought it was a really solid horror film. Cuckoo! This is a horror film that I just didn't get. It was a film that was just too weird for me. I do like a bit of weirdness in the horror films, but this was too much. I didn't get it, really. I'm not gonna lie. It does have some interesting, like, jump scares and, like, interesting imagery and some really creepy imagery. That's really the only thing that I remember from it, to be honest. I'm not the biggest fan of this film, but I do appreciate it. Revel Ridge. This film really surprised me. I felt like this film kind of came out of the blue because I hadn't heard, like, any buzz surrounding it. Just one day it dropped on Netflix and then everyone was talking about it. But it is a really good film, a really tense film. I like how it builds up constantly as this guy tries to get revenge on the police. You know, that's basically the Spark Nights version of the story, is him trying to get revenge on the police. And it's very fun. Kneecap. I don't think I've seen an Irish film before, to be honest. It's my first ever Irish film, and it feels extremely Irish, which I like. It's a biopic where these guys play themselves, so that's really fun, and it's really creative as well. There's so many interesting shots and visuals to, like, represent the drugs they're on and that, I guess. And obviously a lot of things are dramatized in here, but I really enjoyed it. This is where I'm like, oh, where do I put everything? Diddy. I mean Dee, not Diddy. This was one of my favourites of the year when I watched it. I remember I put it close to the top. I think it's a really good coming of age film. It's really relatable in moments, which I really liked. I don't think I've seen a coming of age story be as honest and, like, relatable as this film was, really. And it really represents, like, the period that it was set in really well. The late 2000s, I think it is. Really good film. Trap. I know a lot of people absolutely hate this film, but it's so fun. I'll put it there. Like, the M. Night Shyamalan dialogue is so unintentionally funny a lot of the time, but I love it for that. And just this main character played by Josh Hartnett and how he manages to get out of all these situations. It's so fun. I know people say that it drops the ball in the third act, but I was still liking it all the way to the end. I kind of love this film. Ex-Humor. I haven't had a lot of people talking about this film, even though it has a good amount of, 112k people have logged this, but a lot of people that I'm following haven't seen it. Yeah, I decided to watch it because of how popular it was, and I thought it was a very interesting paranormal film. It presents the paranormal in a very interesting way. There is some really creepy imagery involved with these ghosts in that. There's some really goofy imagery as well. Like, I remember there's, like, a woman's head on this worm or something, or a snake. I can't even remember, but it looked kind of goofy. There's some fun moments. I can't remember a lot from this film, but they're like Korean Ghostbusters, basically, and they go around trying to kill these ghosts, and it's pretty fun. I'll put it above more than they are. Kinds of Kindness. A lot of people saying this is not as good as Poor Things, but I don't think it's as good as Poor Things, but I think it's still really good. I think people are hating on it a bit too much. I really like the anthology aspect of everything, and you got the trio of characters. You got Emma Stone, Jesse Plemons, Willem Dafoe playing these different characters in these 3 different stories, and all these stories are really unique and really interesting in their own way, and I really like all of them, and I really appreciate all of them. I do really like this film overall. Evil Does Not Exist. This is a slow burn film, I guess. It really lets you take in these environments and take in these characters, and yeah, it's probably the quietest film of the year. It's just like a really beautiful film a lot of the time. I'm not gonna lie, I can't remember a lot of the characters in it, but yeah, the village inhabitants become aware a plan to build a camping site near the house. It's these main characters trying to stop this camping site from being built, and I did find it pretty engaging for what seems like a really boring slow film. It really brings you into this place. Yeah, and I remember the ending got really dark. I can't actually remember what happened in the ending, but I remember it getting pretty dark really fast. Thelma. This is a film about a boomer who gets scammed because she's a boomer. I'm joking. It's about an old woman who gets scammed, and she personally wants to find the guy who scammed her. Yeah, she goes on an adventure to find this guy who scammed her, basically. And it's very fun. I think June Squibb, is it? I think she puts in a really fun performance, a really wholesome performance as this old woman. I'm pretty sure she's in the 90s. Yeah, just amazing performance. It's a very nice slice of life film, you know. Old woman. Yeah, I like it. Fly Me to the Moon. This is about, I think it's about these 2 characters who are told to film a fake version of the moon landing just in case the real moon landing ends up going wrong or the image goes out or something. It's something like that. Yeah, a lot of people are saying how this film looks like a film inside of a film. It kind of feels like that at some moments during this film, I'm not gonna lie. It doesn't feel like a real film sometimes. It's pretty fun. I like Channing Tatum and Scarlett Johansson. I think they have good chemistry during the film. It doesn't do anything wrong, but again, it's another one of those films where it plays it a bit safe, so I'll put it here. Long Legs. This is one that stuck with me throughout the year, really. It's a really well done horror film. Nicolas Cage's performance was so good. I love Nicolas Cage. I love how it has this kind of dark comedy aspect to it, especially with Nicolas Cage. Like at the end, he literally like winks to the camera. Like that's how the film ends. But yeah, it's a very interesting detective cop like thriller, which turns into like a paranormal horror, I guess, during the second half, and it really blends those two genres really well. I don't know if I've told this story before, but when I was watching this film, one of the posters fell off my wall and it went behind my shelf, and I actually shat myself. Then I went to look where the poster was, and I was literally like taking all the stuff off my shelf, looking like where the poster had fell, and I couldn't find it, and I still can't find it to this day. I don't know where it went. I don't know if it went under the shelf or like it went to the side behind the wall or something. I don't even know. It just like it's like it vanished into thin air, and to this day it's kind of creeped me out. Yeah, I don't know if this film has some kind of horrible energy radiating off it or something, but yeah, I still love it. I still think it's a really good horror film, one of the best of the year. Twisters. This was so generic. I wasn't the biggest fan of the first film. I thought that was pretty generic, but this was just even more generic. You know, it's just boring. I think the only thing that it really has going for it is Glenn Powell. I thought Glenn Powell was pretty good in it, pretty fun. I do not remember a lot that happens in it. It's just like, it's such a nothing film. I put it there because again, it has Glenn Powell in it. Despicable Me 4, this is going near the bottom. Like a lot of these films, it's just like such a nothing film. I don't remember anything from this. The minions become superheroes or whatever. That's really it. The villain's so forgettable. I don't remember Gru having a lot to do in this film. Gru's usually the best part of these films, and I don't think he did anything in this film, to be honest. Oh yeah, becomes a dad. Forgot he had a child. But it's just like clearly a kid's film. Pixar, Disney films, DreamWorks, they appeal to like a family audience. It's like a family experience. Whereas Illumination, it just really feels like they're kids' films, you know, straight up kids' films, and nothing says it more than this film here. Maxine, I thought it was a good conclusion to the X trilogy. I do think it's the weakest. I still appreciate it. I think it's pretty good. I like the Hollywood setting. As someone who obviously hasn't been to Hollywood and that, it's interesting seeing what Hollywood is like, especially in like the 1980s, like the peak of Hollywood, you know. And the plot is really good as well. All these murders happening and Maxine trying to build her name as an actress in Hollywood. It's very interesting from that aspect. I do think the third act is a bit odd. It goes in a very weird direction and it ends really confusingly, but I think I liked it. So yeah, One Life. This was just boring. I do think it had like a really emotional core to it. Anthony Hopkins does put in a really good performance, but it's just like, it wasn't my thing. And I'm into like history, I'm into like the world wars and that and stuff like that, but this guy's story that the film's based on, it just wasn't that interesting. It just didn't seem like very film worthy. It does try and pull on some heartstrings, but it just didn't hit for me. But I do appreciate it. Wicked Little Letters. This is probably one of the most underrated films of the year for me. This is one of those films that no one has been talking about, and it's such a fun film. I actually loved it. It's set in like the 1800s, I think. I don't know if it's based on true events. I think it might be. Yeah, it's about this family who keeps getting these like absolutely like awful offensive letters, and it's assumed that the neighbour is writing these letters, so they try and put her in jail and that. And then there's a big twist that happens like halfway through the film that completely shocked me. It's a really well written, fun film. I might put it a little bit higher. I might put it a little bit higher. Inside Out 2. This is a really good sequel. This is the highest grossing film of 2024, which is a bit shocking, to be honest. Like a sequel to an animated film that came out like almost a decade ago now. But yeah, it's the highest grossing animated film like of all time, which is insane. And it's really good. It continues Riley's story from the last film really well. It expands this world inside her head really well. The new emotions that are introduced are really fun. Yeah, A Quiet Place Day 1, I thought it was pretty solid. I thought it was alright. It doesn't take a lot of risks. I thought it'd be more exciting, to be honest. Like A Quiet Place in like the city in New York when it began, I thought it'd be like way more exciting, but they kind of skipped past the part where everyone starts to realise that something's going on and all these people are dying and all these people are getting killed and that by these aliens. It kind of skips past that part because one of the characters gets knocked out and then they just wake up and and everyone just understands what the monsters do, and that it kind of just removes the excitement. I did like the lead actress's performance. There is a lot of tense moments that I remembered from it, so yeah, I'll put it there. Deadpool and Wolverine. There's another one of those films where it's just so unbelievably fun. It's not a well-made film compared to some of the other films in this list anyway, but it's so fun. I love the Deadpool films, and obviously Deadpool and Wolverine teaming up, Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds teaming up is just like a match made in heaven, really, you know. It really is. There's so many funny moments in there, so many good gags. Obviously the cameos in there, so many people have talked about the cameos, but the cameos are just so good. Yeah, it's just such a fun time, front to back. Put it there. Put it there. I'll put it there, thank you. Bad Boys Ride or Die. This is like clearly the best Bad Boys film in my opinion. It's just so creative with the cinematography in this film. Like the cinematography is so creative. There's so many sick shots in there. Like there's a shot that's been shared all around social media where Will Smith's like shooting all these people, and it's like a POV, but then the POV switches around and then you see Will Smith shooting the gun and then it switches back round to the POV. It's so sick. But yeah, I think the plot's the best out of all these films. I like how it really like deals with Will Smith and Martin Lawrence really aging and their age kind of catching up with them, and it's really funny as well, which you kind of want out of Will Smith and Martin Lawrence. I just realised I put Inside Out 2 under Trap. Like I'm gonna put it above Trap. Yeah. Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. This is the weakest out of the Planet of the Apes films, like the new films, but I still think it's pretty good. It continues the events of the original trilogy pretty well, like over 100 years later or whatever, where this ape society is built out. And I like this new character that we follow. I forgot his name. Noah. I still thought it was pretty solid, but it's just nothing amazing. And again, I don't remember much from it. I think it's a little bit forgettable. The Bike Riders. I remember really liking this one when I first watched it. Really good performances from Tom Hardy, Austin Butler, and it's basically about these bike riders, you know, who get into trouble with other gangs and try to recruit new members and that. I think it's told from the perspective of the wife, if I can remember, and she's like recording how she met this bike rider and how they fell in love and that. It is a very interesting story. I think it's another one that's based on true events, and I thought it was really interesting front to back. I'll put it there. Beverly Hills Cop Axel F. This is a really fun one. It's a really good legacy sequel. I really love Eddie Murphy as an actor. He's just a really good comedic actor, even though he doesn't really choose the best films, but when he's in a good film, he's really good in it. There's some really good action sequences, really good car chases. Again, don't remember much from it compared to like the first film. Like the first film is just iconic, really good. This film just doesn't get up to the heights of that first film, so I'll put it there though. I had a fun time with that. The Beast. This is a sci-fi film where I think it's where people are able to live through alternate timelines or the past, that they're able to live like an alternate life in the past or something as someone, or they're able to live as someone in the past. I can't remember. Mercer, oh yeah, in her past lives. Yeah, it's like these people have past lives, I think, and then they can enter the past lives if they remove their emotions in the real world. It's really interesting, but it is really hard to remember. And I think there's some romance elements in it as well. There's some romance, and I remember the ending being pretty tragic as well. Yeah, I remember it being really good. I'll put it up here. In a Violent Nature. This is one I remember because, oh my god, the kills in here. If you know the yoga kill, you know the yoga kill. Like, you're not gonna unsee the yoga kill. I promise you that. I really like it. It feels like a Friday the 13th film, but it's told from the perspective of the killer, basically. It kind of makes fun of the Friday the 13th films and like the dialogue and the stupid characters. It has a weird sense of humour to it because it is like you're seeing it from this killer's perspective, and it's a very slow burn film as well. It really takes its time, and I feel like you really get to kind of connect a little bit emotionally with this killer. And again, the kills are just absolutely wild. There's a lot of great shots in here. I get how some people would find it really boring because a lot of it is just him walking through the woods, but I've kind of felt the tension building up every time he would walk through the woods because I just know he's just going to kill someone. So I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. If this one actually surprised me, I didn't hear a lot of people saying this was that great, but I found it to be a really like sweet and just pretty charming film. It's directed by John Krasinski, who did the first two Quiet Place films, and he really switched up with this film. Like, the Quiet Place films are obviously horror, and this is a very family friendly film about imaginary friends, but again, it's really sweet. It's just a really sweet film. I can't hate on it. I found the ending to be pretty like wholesome. I do think John Krasinski as the dad in this film was a little bit of a weird character, and his character doesn't make a lot of sense. Apart from that, again, I think it's a solid film. So yeah, I'll put it there. Problemista. There's another one that I thought was one of the best of the year. This is just a creative film. It's really funny. The humour is very odd. It's like not a sense of humour that I feel like some people would like, but I really enjoyed it. It's really funny. It's really weird, but in a really good way. And it's also really emotional as well. Like the ending is like great and just perfect. Tilda Swinton's character is so good in it. She's like a complete boomer who doesn't know how to use her phone properly, and she just gets so angry over everything. I love the main character and how he just like wants to fit in, and he wants to get this job and get his visa and stay in the country, obviously. And yeah, you're really rooting for this character. I love the film. I think it's a really good film. I saw the TV Glow. This is one that really stuck with me the whole year. There's so much disturbing imagery in this film. It just feels like an inescapable like hellhole, this film, to be honest. Like it's just something about it that just feels just like so constricting and horrible. It's obviously like a film for like the trans experience and like a representation of that, and it's done so well. Again, it's so disturbing, heartbreaking, and just it's really beautiful as well. Yeah, I don't think I'll watch it again because it's just so like it's such an insane experience of a film, but I do actually appreciate it, and I kind of appreciate it more over time, which with some films is kind of the opposite. It's a very vivid film, you know. The imagery in there is amazing as well. Hitman, this is one I remember really loving. Again, this is one where Glenn Powell is actually in a good film this time, in a really good film, playing this guy who works undercover for the cops, and he plays all these different characters to catch all these people out, which is really interesting. And then he ends up meeting this woman who ends up falling in love with, but he meets her as one of these characters, and then he feels like he has to keep this character up, and it is so fun. I love it. It's probably one of my favourites of the year. Really fun film. Oh god, The League of Ungentlemen, how am I going to spell this? The League, what, how do you spell this? Oh, the Ministry of Ungentleman Warfare, Guy Ritchie. I'm not gonna lie, Guy Ritchie's been putting out so much mid films recently, I'm not gonna lie. Like, Wrath of Man was so unbelievably mid. I thought Operation Fortune was really mid as well, and this is just no different. I literally don't remember anything from this. I think it's Henry Cavill and a bunch of people in the war who killed the Nazis and that, and it was just so uninteresting. I might actually put this near the bottom, you know. The more I think about it, the less I remember. At least Wolves had George Clooney and Brad Pitt's like chemistry, but this is just like nothing. I don't remember anything from this. I might put it at the bottom. I might have laughed at some of the jokes in Despicable Me 4, but this film I'm actually struggling to remember. The First Omen. This is such a great horror. It's a really good prequel to that First Omen. This is the First Omen, but that's the First Omen. There's another one of those horror films where it has really disturbing imagery. There's some really disturbing imagery in here. Some images that I won't be able to get out of my head. There's a scene involving a vagina. But I remember this film being really good. Don't remember much from it. Again, I thought it was a really well made horror. I'm gonna put this one here. Furiosa, Mad Max Saga. This one was a bomb, which was really bad because it's a really good film. It's actually my favourite out of the Mad Max films. I'm not gonna lie, I really wanted to like Fury Road, but I just didn't like it as much as other people. The thing that I just didn't like the most was the shots that sped up everything, but all the shots were like sped up. It kind of messed with my brain, I'm not gonna lie. I didn't find it an enjoyable experience, but I thought this was a really good film. I did find Furiosa a really interesting character from Fury Road, and I like seeing her like origin story in this film. I think Chris Hemsworth put in such a good performance as the villain, and there's so many good sequences in her. There's some really good sequences, so yeah. Oh shit! Civil War. This is a really interesting film showing a like alternate history, I guess, or alternate future. I can't remember now. Where America has a civil war, basically. And I like how it follows these photographers and their journey to get these photos. It kind of really shows the risks that war photographers take when taking photos of war, like the risk it faces. Obviously everyone talks about the Jesse Plemons scene. The Jesse Plemons scene is so intense, bro. The Jesse Plemons scene alone bumps it up. It's so tense and like so scary. But the rest of the film is really solid as well. I really like this film overall. I place it here. Challengers. Oh god, I just entered the wrong film. What even is this film, blood? This is a really solid film. The direction of this film is so good. The soundtrack, obviously, by Trent Reznor, Atticus Ross, like, amazing soundtrack. This love triangle thing that goes on throughout the film is so investing. Again, the thing that stands out the most to me is the filmmaking. Like, the filmmaking is so good in here. So many great shots in here. Great performances from the three leads as well. Looking back on it, it isn't as memorable as I want it to be. Obviously, there is some scenes that I definitely remember involving the three. But it's a good film. It's a really, really well made film. I'm gonna put it here. Again, I don't think it's as memorable as I wanted it to be, but it's still a really good film. I really feel like I should move Civil War up now as well. I'll move Civil War next to Furiosa. Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. This was so generic. It's probably the weakest Ghostbuster film that I've seen. I haven't seen the women Ghostbusters because I didn't hear great things about it. That's the only one I didn't see. But this is like the weakest out of all of them by far. I like how it kind of follows some of the child characters more. This character has a relationship with a ghost, but just clearly an evil person. Like, it's a twist that I saw coming from a mile away. There's some like really cringe jokes in it, I remember. There's someone who becomes like a waterbender or something. Is it waterbender or firebender? Or something bender, which was just like weird. But it's Ghostbusters, so I guess I give it a pass. Bill Murray and the other two Ghostbusters returned that are still alive, and they just didn't add much, I don't think. I think I did enjoy some moments from it, but it's just like forgettable. Abigail. This film was really fun. Same directors as Ready or Not, which I loved. I think that was a really good horror film, a really creative horror film, and this film is no different. It's really fun. I wish the trailers didn't spoil the twist because it's such a good twist, and if I didn't see that twist coming, then I'd probably love this film much more. But I like how it's built up, and you got these cast of characters kidnap this girl overnight for some money, and yeah, it ends up escalating very quick. I do think the ending might have got a bit too over the top, but I like a bit of goofiness. And it is pretty goofy, and I like a bit of goofiness, so I did enjoy it a lot. It's very fun. It's a really good child performance as well. The child performance in here is really good. You don't usually get that in a lot of films, but like, really good child performance. I'll put it there. The Fall Guy. This is like an ode to stunt work. It's, again, very fun film. The relationship between Ryan Gosling and Emily Blunt is really fun. There's some really well shot scenes, some fun action scenes. I watched this one in cinemas, which I guess a lot of people didn't do because it did really bad at the box office, but I enjoyed it. I thought it was really solid. I'll put it there. It's fun. It's fun. Hundreds of Beavers. I don't think I've seen a movie that's this, like, creative in its style. It has such an interesting style, which I've never seen with a film before. It's literally gag after gag after gag, but it manages to work so well and still have a like coherent story without just being gag after gag. It's just really funny. Again, style is really great. It feels low budget, but in like a really good way. A lot of people have made this comparison, but it's like it's a live action Looney Tunes cartoon. It's so fun. I really respect it on the fact that it's a pretty low budget film and it's gained this much attraction. Love Lies Bleeding. There's an interesting romance. I'm pretty sure this woman falls in love with this bodybuilder, and I think they both have their like issues. One of them has like steroid abuse and that, and it kind of escalates from there, I think. Again, I've seen it a long time ago. I'm trying to remember what happened. I remember there being some really like trippy sequences in there. Again, good performances, good chemistry between the two leads. I'll put it here. Monkey Man. I think this is Dev Patel's directorial debut, and it's really good. It looks amazing. The choreography and the action scenes in it are so good. I know a lot of people complain about like the shaky cam in this film, but I think it really like amped up the tension in these fight scenes, and there's just so many creative fight scenes in it, and it really like delved into like Indian lore and like Indian lore. That sounds really like yeah, Indian beliefs and like Indian mythology. And it's very interesting in that sense. I liked it. I just realised how similar the poster to Monkey Man and the First Omen are. Like, they look very similar. I will put this here. Late Night with the Devil. Another really solid film. I'm not gonna lie, the use of AI in this film is kind of not good, and it does kind of tarnish the film a little bit for me. But if you put that to the side, it's still a really good film. Like, I don't think this has been done before, like a horror film that is told through like a late night TV show. It's really interesting, and there's so many creepy moments. Like, there's so many good practical effects as well. It does look a bit cheap, I'm not gonna lie. Like, during the like late night footage, obviously like they must have shot it on like a digital camera, and they must have put like a VHS filter over it or something, and it just doesn't look like an actual TV show from the 80s or whatever. When it's recorded in the context of the film, it just doesn't immerse me as much as I wanted it to. And there are some like behind the scenes moments that don't work as behind the scenes moments, you know, but I could still get into it enough. And again, really good practical effects, really like genuinely creepy moments. Immaculate. I know a lot of people didn't like this film. I think it's because most people saw The First Omen and just thought these two films were really similar, and they just thought First Omen did it better. But I still think this film was really solid. Sydney Sweeney does a really good performance in it. It works well as a really good like mystery. There's something weird going on, and then yeah, I think the reveal's done pretty well. I really liked it. I'll put it there. Kung Fu Panda 4. I'm probably in the minority here, but I thought this was better than 3. I really like the stuff between Poe's dad and Mr. Ping in this film. I thought that was a really good side plot. I didn't actually mind the Aquafina side character. She wasn't as annoying as I would expect her to be. I thought the villain was pretty cool. I know it was kind of an excuse just to bring back the old villains from the other 3 films, but I thought it was pretty solid. I'm not gonna lie. I thought he was alright. I'll put it there. Ricky Stenicki. This is another one that I think a lot of people didn't like, but I thought it was a really good, like, it felt like a little bit of an ode to, like, early 2000s comedies. It just had that feeling to it, and I feel like we don't get a lot of these anymore. It's just really fun. There are some really funny scenes. I think John Cena is really like having it up playing this like stupid character, and it's a fun concept as well. Like, you got these friends who made up this random guy, and over time it kind of stuck, and now like they have to actually make up this actual guy now. I just enjoyed it overall. It felt like a comedy from the early 2000s, which I don't feel like we get anymore. Yeah, I wish we got more of them. Am I really going to put it above Conclave? I'll put it there. Godzilla vs. Kong, A New Empire. This film is just turn off your brain stupid fun. I've said this word a million times now, but it's so fun. You have 2 massive like Titan characters on Earth battling it out with villains. I do think the human stuff isn't as good. I watched the previous Monsterverse films before watching this one. Like, my main complaint about all of those films were really the human characters. Apart from Kong Skull Island, like, I thought the human characters were pretty fun in there, but for the rest of the films, they're just so boring. And I feel like they took a bit of a backseat in this film, which I liked, but they still were pretty prominent, and I felt they could have done with less of them. But yeah, really fun, stupid time. I put it here. Lisa Frankenstein. This is Zelda Williams' directorial debut. I think it's Robin Williams' daughter, which is really interesting. This is really good as a directorial debut. It's another film where it has so much style to it. It really looks beautiful. I love films that are set in the 80s, and this film really like embraces the 80s. There's so much 80s imagery that I loved. And the story's just so fun about this woman who falls in love with a zombie, basically. And she's a weird woman. I put this film pretty high. I liked it. Bob Marley, One Love. This is a pretty forgettable biopic. I literally don't remember anything from this. I mean, it's Bob Marley's life story, I guess, but like, it doesn't stand out enough as a biopic. It doesn't have the source that some biopics have. Hitting the like bare basic notes on Bob Marley's life and just not really delving into like certain bits of his life. But I remember it being like pretty solid overall. It didn't like do disservice to Bob Marley as a guy. I'll put it there. Spaceman. This was an Adam Sandler film. I watched a lot of Adam Sandler films last year. I don't know why, I just felt like it. Yeah, this film was really boring. It's so lifeless for a film that could have been like so full of life, you know? It's a film about this spaceman who meets a giant spider. Like, it should be like more of a comedy, but it plays it so straight, and because of that it's so boring. It does nothing interesting at all. It keeps flashing back to this guy's wife on Earth, and her character isn't built out nearly enough, so you just don't care about any of the scenes on Earth. Yeah, I'll put it there. Greatest Night in Pop. This is such a good documentary about the making of We Are the World, which is a horrible song, but yeah, as a charity single, and it shows like all this behind the scenes footage of behind the scenes on making this song, and it's so interesting. And you got like talking heads, mainly from Lionel Richie, who goes through and explains how this song came to be, and it's a very interesting documentary. Like, I was really interested throughout. Yeah, it was just edited really well for a documentary as well. I never got bored. It's just very interesting. I'll put it up here. Drive Away Dolls. This was such a weird film. I forgot this even came out this year, to be honest. Like, there's Margaret Qualley in this film as well, who's in Substance, obviously later in the year. But this film was so weird. She's doing like a Sandy Cheeks accent, bro. She sounds like Sandy Cheeks. And you got Pedro Pascal playing someone called like the Penis Collector, and he collects people's penises or whatever. It's a weird ass film. And they got like Colin Domingo was in this. I don't remember him being in this. But yeah, like Pedro Pascal, Penis Collector. Matt Damon was in this. I don't remember him being in there. This is a weird film. It has like Microsoft PowerPoint transitions as well. Literally, I'm not even saying they were like Microsoft PowerPoint transitions. They literally were Microsoft PowerPoint transitions. It's a weird film. I can't emphasize how weird it was, but it kind of worked. It's very creative in some moments, I remember. Yeah, so I didn't mind it as much as other people did, I guess. Robot Dreams. This one is I think it's going to number 1. It's going to be my number 1 favourite film. I loved this film when I first saw it. I nearly cried. Again, another one where I just had so much emotions with it. But it managed to tell this like really beautiful story about this dog and a robot, and just tell it just so beautifully without any dialogue. I love the soundtrack as well. Like Earth, Wind and Fire, September is one of my favourite songs of all time, so you can't really go wrong with including it in this film. But it's incorporated so well into the film that, like, when I listen to Earth, Wind and Fire and September now, I can't not think of this film. It's such a beautiful film. I just connected with it straight away. Yeah, it's going to number one. I need to give it a rewatch, to be honest. I really do want to give it a rewatch soon. I bought it on Blu-ray, so yeah, that's definitely due for a rewatch. Alone in the Dark. This film was really well animated. It's a DreamWorks film that literally no one talked about last year. I don't think I've heard anyone talking about this film. Yeah, I thought it was creative in the way that you got these like spirits that deal with like dreams and stuff in the night and the dark and light and that. It is very interesting how it deals with that. I really hated when it would flash forward to like the older version of this character. Like, it was so unneeded. I felt like they had to pad the film out by flashing forward to like the older version of this child character in the film, and he has his own daughter, and the stuff they do with that is really bad. I thought it was just dealt with really horribly, but I thought the rest of it was pretty charming, pretty fun. So yeah, I'll put it there. Dune Part 2. This is one that a lot of people love more than me. Dune Part 1 I thought was just so boring the first time I saw it. I thought it was a really well made film. I thought the script was really good, but I just wasn't into the story or the world as much as I wanted to. And it's kind of the same with this film, but I was a little bit more into the world. I was a little bit more into the story. I did kind of like these characters a little bit more. I thought it was very solid. There's another one that I want to give a rewatch because it's the highest rated film of the year, and it's the most popular film of the year, so I do want to give that one a rewatch, see if my opinions change on it, I guess. But for now, I will put it there. Oh my god, 57? That seems really low. I feel bad for putting it there, actually. I don't know. Oh, I'll put it up here, like, just because I don't want to make people angry, you know. But like, I don't know. Again, I need to give it a rewatch to really like secure my opinion on it. But yeah, Poor Things. This is another one that's going near the top. Such a good film. Another Yorgos Lanthimos film. It just feels like another one of those films where it just like feels iconic already. Great performances. The visuals in here are some of those greatest visuals of the year. There's so many like wide angle lens shots, really like interesting shots that kind of bring you into the world of this character as she's like experiencing this world for the first time. It's just such an interesting story in that sense, and it's really funny as well. I remember people were sharing on Twitter that scene where Mark Ruffalo breaks character in a scene, but they left it in, and it is like it works. It somehow works in like the context of the film, but it's so funny. I want to give this one a rewatch again. Another one that I really want to give a rewatch. Really good film. All of Us Strangers. This is another really good film. I put this near the top again. I put this. Yeah, it seems like it might bring it down a little bit. But there's another one that I really connected with. Like, it feels like a very British film, you know? It has Top of the Pops in here. Like, the main character in this story watches reruns of Top of the Pops, which my parents do every Friday. Like, on Friday, they still do reruns of Top of the Pops on, like, BBC 4. And my parents watch that all the time. But, yeah, I used to watch reruns of Top of the Pops and that all the time as well. So, it's relatable in that sense. But also, you have this really emotional story to do with, like, loss and not being able to let go of people that you've lost in your life. And it's a really, like, tragic, sad story, but it's told really beautifully. There's some really, like, emotional moments in a really well done moments, and yeah, really loved it. For Zone of Interest, talking of like emotional and like heavy films, like this is about like a house next to a concentration camp basically. Like most of the film takes place inside this house, and it's just very unnerving as you hear like the screams of people in the camps next to the house, and it's just like, yeah, it's very unsettling as a film. It's probably a film that I never see again because it's just so unsettling, but it is done really well. I will put this one, I think I'll put it there. Again, not one I watch again, but really well made. Like, really disturbing sequences in here. So, and then finally, the last film that I watched... No, the first film that I watched, I guess, is The Beekeeper. This is such a goofy, like, stupid film with Jason Statham's character getting revenge on this woman who got murdered or whatever, and he's just like this unstoppable force. I don't think he even seems human by the end of it. Like, he seems like a supernatural person, like how much he manages to like get out of all these situations and like survive all these things. But it's just such a fun film watching this unstoppable force just plow through everyone. Like, it's so fun. I'll put this here. I actually forgot to put this one on the list, but yeah, decided to snow. I think this is a really well made film. Really hard to watch at points. It is a bit of a slow burn as these people crash in these mountains and they're just basically suffering for like 2.5 hours. But it's so well done, so well acted. It's really satisfying at the end as well. Like everything is resolved. Yeah, I liked it. That's really good. So I put it there. So yeah, I have just ranked every 2024 film from worst to best. Quickly before this video ends, I just want to say I've started my 2025 ranked list. So if you're interested in that, give it a like. If that's a dislike, if it's a dislike, I'll see it.